Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world. With self-care strategies from Chinese medicine, functional medicine, Ayurveda, neuroscience, and beyond. I'm your host, Brody Welch, a licensed acupuncturist and transformation catalyst, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. Hello, and welcome to A Healthy Curiosity. I'm Brody Welch, licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, health catalyst, and your host for today's show, which is really the first show in a new era of podcasting for me. It's going to be an era defined by a slower pace and a lot more, I think, solo reflections on life and Chinese medicine, and specifically how Chinese medicine helps me navigate my world. Because last episode, I did the equivalent of like ghosting people at a party, of kind of slipping out the back door in the last few minutes of the episode, the Q&A episode, where I entertained a couple of listener questions. I made this little short announcement about putting an end to what I've been doing for 4.5 years of weekly showing up, usually with a guest, and doing an interview style show. I felt like it was really important to take a break from staying in motion for the sake of motion, even though business coaches will tell me that part of my brand is trust, and how can I engender trust with my audience if I'm not showing up weekly? Well, I'd like to think that you know me better than that by now, that I've been revealing enough and authentic enough with you to have established some credibility and predictability that I do what I tell you that I'm going to do. And so right now I'm making the choice to pivot towards more time for inner reflection, inner digestion. And in order to do that, I really have to shut out some of the noise. Some of that noise includes just what it takes to produce a podcast, like the latest equipment or the latest way of getting your interview to sound good, or the latest way of publicizing your show, and sharing your show on Instagram and sharing your show on all these different platforms, and all of this stuff that I have to pay attention to when I'm thinking about podcasting, not to mention all of the pitches from publicists who are sending me, frankly, like a lot of mediocre people, or like not necessarily mediocre people, but people with very generic messages that aren't necessarily a right fit for you. And that might have, it's really tough for me, not knowing a lot of these people personally, to filter out the people who are amazing, fabulous gems versus the people with large marketing teams and budgets and usually egos. So there's like kind of like this taking a stand for taking my time back and saying no to things that feel unnecessary, to leave room for things that are. And that is one of the lessons of Chinese medicine that we get from the season of winter. The season of winter is about the conservation of scarce resources. Something that if we didn't do, like kind of if you can imagine sort of hundreds or thousands of years ago, if we didn't conserve resources in the winter, like for heat and fuel and food, we might not make it. So all of nature in the winter goes into this kind of quietude. It looks like dormancy. It looks like not much is happening. There's no buds on the trees. There's no fruit. The animals are like hibernating and quiet, and the birds, at least if you're in the north, have taken off. They've gone elsewhere. They're not singing. There's a lot of quiet and stillness. And winter corresponds with the element of water, which is reflective. It's the most yin of the elements. So in winter, we should be doing less. We should be kind of honoring our yin a bit more. And for me, this was a really hard call to make, because I absolutely love learning from people who are doing amazing work in the world and being able to share that with you. I also love being able to talk about the things that are important to me and really democratize the teachings of Chinese medicine, which is something that I think is part of my dharma, part of what my zone of genius, and something that I love using the podcast for. But the thing is that there is a season for everything. And so just as life is about the pulsation of yin and yang and the movement of the five elements or through the seasons, we can think about it that way, that it's still like, it's not always summer, right? Everything's not always in full bloom all the time. And just because you love something and value it doesn't mean you have to do it all the time. This is what breaks are about and what boundaries are about. And we need them in order to keep doing the things that we love. And I really do love podcasting. I really do love showing up and being able to connect with you in this way. So one of the things that really surprised me when I made this announcement that I would be basically only showing up when I felt like it was necessary, when I felt like I really had something to say, but taking the pressure off of having to do it week after week after 220 episodes in 4.5 years. But I heard from so many of you who shared that some of the most valuable things about the show were not necessarily the expertise of my guests, though that's valuable, but the insights that I share about my own life and the way that I am navigating the world and the way that I weave Chinese medicine into things. And I got to thinking that I actually could continue doing the show with that as its focus for a little while. And then, of course, there's the reality that in the past, the truth has been that solo shows have taken me about 10 times longer to prepare for than interviews, because if I'm just having a conversation, well, it's over in an hour. And then obviously there's like editing and things like that. But if I'm going to actually have something to say, I want to prepare. I have high standards. I don't want to let you down. I want this to be worth your time. And so it's like, what if I were to just continue sharing with you about Chinese medicine and how I dance with it through my life and things that it's taught me or things that are showing up in clinic and kind of what patients are dealing with and the way that plays into both health and personal development. And that maybe it doesn't actually have to take me 10 hours to do a show. So I'm playing with standing in my truth and the fact that I can honor the fact that I have something to say and that I don't actually have to research it or make it like the be all end all conversation. So essentially, I'm giving myself permission to podcast imperfectly. Dun, dun, dun. Shocking. But so anyway, so I'm really going to try to like really cap the amount of time it takes me to put an episode together so that it doesn't take 10 zillion hours and still provide value for you. So just to kind of go through this idea of seasons and timing in Chinese medicine, that is something that I come back to over and over again, right? So in the flow of the five elements, to recap a little bit, is that I've discussed winter just a minute ago. It's this time of dormancy. And then we don't necessarily, it's a time where like, it's not like we're doing nothing, but we're leaving space for things to percolate and to be germinating underneath the soil. Like before you see the first flowers coming up out of the soil, they're busting out of their seeds and they are moving towards the light. And we might not be able to see it, but that is happening. And that is something that I have to remind myself is happening as I slog through an Oregon February. The rain, the damp that just makes me feel heavy and tired, frankly, because that's the effect that the environment of dampness has on the body, or at least on my body, which is prone to dampness. And I haven't had my usual escapes to sunshine. My world has not been punctuated by regular get-togethers with friends that provide a bright spot in my week because of COVID and because it's cold and wet and rainy and much harder to get together unless we're wrapped in electric blankets. So I have to kind of honor where I'm at, which is that like I'm in a more yin season, and whether that is seasonal affective disorder or whether that is mood, hormone fluctuation, amplifying depression, or whether that is COVID burnout from holding space for a lot of people who are lonely and struggling and hurting, and actually increasing my hours at clinic and having kind of essentially being a lot of people's social lives. It's like, I love that. And it's an honor and a privilege. And at the same time, it is work, and it is work that I need to recover from. Just like an athlete can't train all the time, they need to recover. They need to take breaks in order to not get injured. Breaks are essential, whether you are doing something physical and training for a marathon. You've gotta pace yourself, and you can't run every day. You have to also stretch. You have to also do other things and not run in order to be able to achieve your goal. If you're a creator, you need time to gather inspiration and let your creative juices simmer before you can go do your art and express it. So yin engenders yang. And just like winter leads inevitably to spring, the deepest, darkest part of winter, the winter solstice, suddenly, or yang grows from there. And then when spring happens, like that, nature comes alive, and it's the season of rebirth, and there's activity and growth and all of that. As I see with the crocuses coming up around here, it's like the first signs of life, and the birds that are coming back to Oregon. It's like, okay, it doesn't feel like spring yet at all, but it gives me hope that there's going to be a renewal. There's going to be new growth, new possibilities that I can't necessarily see yet. But if I skip winter, I'm never going to see it, right? It's like that in my own personal life. If I don't go through a period of dormancy and doing less and allowing the quiet, even if it's very uncomfortable, even if all of my wood energy that corresponds with the season of the spring is desperate to fill the vacuum and the space with action, the fact, like the minute that I said that I wasn't going to do podcasting every week, I could immediately feel things brewing underneath the surface. I could feel the creativity, like kind of just bubbling around in there. And I know it's going to come out in some cool new way. So anyway, so spring, right? Is that new growth, new possibilities. And then summer is like the fullness of doing it. It's the manifestation, and it is being in the moment. And that gives way to fall, or actually in Chinese medicine, there's this sneaky late summer season, which is like the reaping what we've sown, harvest time. And then that yields to fall, where we let go of what's not essential and we preserve what is, right? So the leaves drop off the trees, the sap gets pulled inward, and then here we are in winter again. So knowing where we are in the cycles of the season can sometimes be a way that we can be kind to ourselves. So if you've been in a massive productivity mode, or whether you've been overburdened, whether it's by the pandemic or activism for social justice, or the additional stresses that your family members are under and that you've been supporting them through, it's only kind to change your expectations of yourself. Like maybe right now you can't be as productive as you used to be because you've been spending that yang energy, and you need to fill up the well and be more yin in order to enjoy life. So this idea that everything that you value, like your family and your politics and your work and your body and your mind and your spirit and all of the things that you put energy towards, it's okay to take a break, and it's okay to drop boundaries around that stuff. It's okay to quit a committee that you've been on. It's okay to say no to things, because even if they're valuable, it doesn't mean that you're giving up on them. It just means that you're going through one of these cycles of the seasons. Like you can't be in full bloom all the time. Sometimes it has to be winter and dormancy and gray and dark and quiet and uncomfortable. Anyway, so I share this in hopes that I'm doing a bit of role modeling and walking my talk on like daring to do less than you're humanly capable of is actually really radical in this culture that values overwork and overdoing. But also it's sort of this idea that a lot of us are tired right now. A lot of us are more anxious and more depressed. And yet there's this light at the end of the tunnel, right? The vaccines are on the horizon. It's looking like summer might indeed be amazing and delightful and a return to normalcy, but it's not here yet. But the days are getting longer, and the weather is thawing and warming, and the possibilities of doing things like getting on planes and hugging loved ones and eating with them inside might well be a reality by early summer. And that is indeed hopeful. And so in my daily life, I am so wanting to be in the future and yet challenging myself to be present to the discomfort and also to the tiredness that I am experiencing without shaming myself for it. Yeah, I wouldn't shame anyone else for being tired. We've been doing this whole pandemic thing for almost a year now, and life has gotten harder in a lot of ways without the usual outlets that fill up our cup. So at the end of the day, I used to have to exercise in order to transition from the stress of my workday to being at home. And I've noticed, well, first of all, I've changed my schedule so that I'm actually exercising in the morning, which feels great before I go to work. But at the end of the day, I have been taking a walk or hitting the treadmill, even if it's just for a few minutes, regardless of how tired I am. And here's why. And hopefully this is a lesson that you could apply to your own life if it's interesting to you. It can be hard to discern whether we're tired because we're truly tired or whether we're tired because our chi is stagnating and thus not feeling very available to us. And one way to test that, like, how do you honor your body if you don't know what your body is saying? How do you be kind in a given moment? And so one of those ways that I test the hypothesis is that I just start for 5 minutes going for a walk or getting on the treadmill. And that's about the amount of time that it takes for the body to shift from anaerobic to aerobic mode. And at that point, I am able to feel like, oh, if I'm still tired, maybe what I actually need is rest. But on most days, I find that tiredness goes away, that when I move, I'm actually dissipating some of that stagnant energy, and that it's actually really helpful. So when I am tempted to come home and just collapse and veg out, and drink wine, and just settle into some things that like if I were to do them every day would not end up with a life and a body that I like to be in, I challenge that with 5 minutes of activity. And then I honor whether that need for rest could be met in some way or whether actually movement is what I need to do in that moment. In a bigger picture way, thinking about kind of like staying in motion or like doing things that you've always done simply because you've always done them, that's a form of inertia, right? Body in motion stays in motion. Just like inertia can be like, it takes a lot of energy to move a body at rest that's tending to stay at rest. And so looking at your own tendencies, like, do you tend towards more yin or more yang in your life? I certainly tend towards more yang. I certainly try, like, historically, I have done too much. I have gone in too many different directions. And because I feel like everything that I value has to be acted upon, or else it's like, what does it even mean to value it? Like, there's that yin idea of values have to be translated into the yang of action. And I feel like I've been learning this lesson since high school, where I just had way too much going on and was burning myself out even as a teenager. So this idea of, again, seasons and breaks, inhaling and exhaling, activity and rest, the balance between yin and yang, it helps to know what your tendencies are so that you can check them. And of course, there's layers here, right? Nothing is purely yin or yang. Even exercise. Exercise is certainly yang compared to sitting on the couch, no matter what you're doing. But if I think about, well, a routine that I established back in October, when I started, just changing up my daily routine, I decided that I was going to do 30 minutes of something on a mat every morning, followed by hopping on the treadmill or going for a walk, depending on the weather. And so that something on a mat could look like yoga, which could be either super intense power yoga, vinyasa style kind of stuff, or something more gentle and organic that looks more like qigong or dance. or it could be Pilates, or it could be lifting weights, or it could be just anything that my body felt like doing. So it was like my commitment, my structure was getting on the mat every morning, regardless of how I felt. But the flexibility, so like the structure we can think of as a foundational kind of a thing. But then the counterpoint with the flexibility part comes with really being in the moment with myself. What do I need in that moment? And honoring it, letting it be okay. If it's like my body wanted to do something intense, I would honor that. And if my body was tired, well, okay, was it still tired after my first sun salutation? And being able to, and if it was, then fine, being able to honor that with something low key, but still being able to connect to myself and my physicality every day was such good medicine for me in general. If I've learned anything from my 20 years of being infatuated with Chinese medicine, it's to trust the law of change. It's a source of hope for me to recognize that what is now will not ever be forever, because it's the law. Nothing in nature is ever stagnant. It's never the same. It's always changing. And even if we can't see it, it is happening. Furthermore, everything contains the seeds of its opposite within it, and that yin and yang change into one another at their extremes. We go from the darkest day to the year, and then the days start getting lighter until they can't get any more light, and then it starts contracting. So everything is in this cycle of expansion and contraction, growth and decline, energy moving outward, energy moving inward, inhaling, exhaling, taking in, letting go. So perhaps considering what in your life are you inhaling all the time? Are you trying to take in more and more things without letting anything go? Or have you shut down and are not taking in any new possibilities or any new inspiration or input that could shift things in your life in a different direction? Where in your life are you in motion based on momentum, not necessarily conscious action? And where in your life are you letting inertia dictate what happens next? You are ever evolving. What matters and what is important to you may be evolving, as well as your level of energy and your capacity to deal with what's on your plate. I can tell you that stopping the forward momentum of just doing something because it's what I've been doing has been incredibly freeing in streamlining my energy in the few directions that it really needs to go in right now, as opposed to the lawn sprinkler effect of throwing energy in a million different directions without feeling like it's really making a powerful impact. And for those days when life feels like the endless slog through the dark gray Oregon winters, I ask myself what I can do that is the least bit inspiring, the low-hanging fruit that might make this day stand out from the rest. This could be as simple as taking a different route in my walk outside, or making a different recipe, or a phone date with a friend, something to break up the monotony and the seeming lack of new input and new inspiration that we as humans crave. The season of winter is about endings and beginnings. It's this place of dormancy before the new cycle starts. And so it's a great opportunity to get radically honest with yourself about, first of all, your capacity, your amount of chi and blood that you have available to you on a daily basis. What drains you and what gives back to you? What can you truly handle right now? And letting it be okay if that answer is less than it used to be. I totally understand the temptation to judge that, because we live in this yang addicted society where more and busy are prized over being and experiencing and frankly, health. We don't want to be dipping into our reserves all the time on a regular basis, or they won't be there for us when we really need them. And a perpetual sense of overwhelm leads the liver to astringe, for everything to get tighter, less flexible, more irritable, and less adaptable to change, which of course is the law. Everything is constantly changing. And that means To be current, in order to be kind to ourselves, we need to be present to what is right now, not what was a year ago or some sort of mental construct of what we think we should be capable of. And we can really only gain this awareness by looking within and making a habit of looking within, checking in with ourselves, even if it's just a quick spot check of what do I need right now that you ask a few times a day. And then give yourself permission to do it because you're not a machine. You are a living ecosystem changing all the time, connected to a bigger ecosystem that is changing all the time. So thinking in absolutes or holding yourself to one unyielding standard, no matter how you're feeling, is not only unkind, but it's unwise. You wouldn't wear the same outfit in the middle of winter that you would in the middle of the summer. Hopefully you wouldn't eat the same things in the middle of winter as you would in the middle of the summer. And so recognizing where are you and how can we balance yin and yang in this moment in your life? Sometimes the answers we get back from our deepest selves are hard to hear, especially when they seem to go against who we think of ourselves as being or who we need to be in the world. But ultimately, forcing yourself to do something that is too much or against your body's inner wisdom is ultimately going to backfire. And giving yourself permission to stop or to do something else is so, so freeing and worth it. This is something that I work with my coaching clients on, is just helping them get current with who they are right now and what is going to help them support who they are becoming next. If you're feeling like you want to do some inquiry work or could use some support in changing things up in your world, I would be happy to help you. Visit brodywelch.com. Go to the About page or the Work With Me page to learn about what coaching with me would look like. And if you're interested in learning more about yin and yang and Chinese medicine through the years, my Basics of Chinese Medicine, Learn from Anywhere, Anytime, on-demand course is always available to you there as well. Thanks for spending your time with me today. Be well and be good to yourself. Thanks for listening today. To check out the show notes, get on my email list, or drop me a line, head to brodywelch.com. That's Brody with an IE and Welch with a CH. I'd love to hear from you. If you learned something new or feel inspired to try something different in your life, I'd love for you to pay it forward by sharing this episode with a friend who you think could also benefit and give them a reason to listen. You'll be helping to create a world where we encourage each other to embody self-respect. Till next time, be good to yourself.